Now, for the best talk in town, it's the Jane Norris Show.
Hello and welcome to the Jane Norris Show. If you're talking about it out there, we talk about it here and give you a chance to talk back. Today we're going to talk more about youth violence. With the death of Quentin Hammond last Wednesday, there's been an outcry from the community for some sort of resolution to this. What can we do to stop the number of teenage murders that are taking place in our city, if anything? 15 of the 48 murders that have taken place have been teenagers. Majority of them are men, almost universally men have been murdered, and a large majority of those are black men. Is there a reason why there is so little public attention about these murders? Is it because most of them are centered in the West End? And are you concerned about it? And what's the solution to this? We're going to talk to a youth advocate about that and also take your telephone calls. 1-888-800-9283, 571-JANE. Let me talk to my producer, Tammy McNeil. You think there is a lack of concern because it's teenagers and it's the West End and they're black? I mean,
I think there probably is a lack of concern, but also I think that a lot of these young men don't see a future for themselves. They're seeing a dead-end road instead of an interstate. They see themselves not going anywhere, and I think a big part of it is the community's fault.
Community's fault. So what are you willing to do, if anything? How concerned are you, if at all? We'll talk to you about this, and also our youth advocate is coming up, 571-JANE, 1-888-800-9283. Back in a moment. And we're back. We're talking about youth violence today. George Addison is our guest, and he works with an organization called Petite. What's that, George? Hi, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you. Petite stands for Positive Images That Invoke Self-Esteem, and basically it's an organization that deals with at-risk juveniles and children ages 7 through 17. We're based out of the Presbyterian Community Center over in Hancock, which is part of Shepherd Square, which is now known as one of the deadliest areas in the city.
So when you say you're a youth advocate, do you mean that if kids are in trouble with the law, or they've broken the law, or they're having a rough time in school, they get referred to you?
All of the above. I deal with kids who basically been considered as, dead-end kids, not much hope, not much of a future. And what I try to do is show them that there is hope, how to revalue their own lives, first of all, and how to move forward with the resources that are at hand for them.
So there's no one solution. There is no one problem. Every kid is an individual, no doubt.
Correct. And I think that that's the important thing that must be remembered at all times. I've worked in cities such as Miami and Los Angeles, and I've dealt with inner city kids for quite some time now. And here in Louisville, I try to remind people that this is still a budding small community, and there are a lot of good things going forward. And in its rush to become a world-class city, I think that they need to not forget the human element in dealing with their children, who one day will eventually be running the city.
Are they growing pains? Are we seeing an influx of people from the outside who are causing trouble? Or is it just an internal problem, catching up with the rest of the world in terms of,
Well,
I guess with Quentin Hammond, it was a robbery attempt.
Right.
That's what we believe anyway.
Right. Well, and that's still being looked into. I think that some of all those elements that you mentioned are part of the problem here. One, I think that the influence of the media, as far as music videos and films, and play a large role in it. I know that, for instance, there are a couple of rap stars who a lot of the so-called gang members really look up to heavily. Master P, Little Kim, those individuals, they have a big influence. Then also you have to look at the fact that a lot of the people that I get feedback from tell me that they don't really have much hope in their political leaders and their religious leaders, and they tend to feel like they're kind of knocking their own way through without really knowing what road to be on.
You feel like the money that does go into stopping youth violence really doesn't make it to the people who are supposed to get it, that it somehow gets stopped along the pathway?
Well, my perception is that when you look at the bureaucracy that issues out those dollars, they're probably doing the best they can do with the structure they have to work with. A number of individuals in the community who put their life on the line every day, who have yet to be funded by any organized city or state agency, never see those dollars. And they've been doing tremendous work against the odds, so to speak. And then it frustrates them when they see agencies and organizations they feel aren't really out there on a day-to-day basis all of a sudden get huge grants and awards.
Let me talk to you about a couple of common solutions that are often thrown out. More police.
I don't think that that's necessarily where we need to be focused. For an example, over in Shepherd Square, I know probably about half a dozen officers who can go over in Shepherd Square and could probably keep things under control very well. They have very good rapport with the community, with the individuals in the community, but very seldom are those individuals ever utilized in that community. There are always other people brought into the community to police an area, and they have no ties. And as a result, what happens a lot of times whenever there's any incidents or confrontations, they kind of build up animosity towards those people that are over there really
So they're
to
not
try
going to
help
cooperate
them.
even
No.
if they had information.
Right.
Get tougher on juvenile crime.
Well, I think you can get tough. I believe in being tough, but I think you have to understand that toughness also must be accompanied by fairness. To get tough on one group of kids and not get tough on another group, that tends to lead to discrimination down the road. And I think that kids can respect you if you're tough with them, but as long as they come away with a sense of that you're fair as well.
Crack down on small things, curfew violations, problems in school, and you'll get rid of the bigger ones.
Well, I think that if you actually allocate more opportunity for those kids that they consider unrecyclable to get an education, starting with reading, there are probably about 80 to 85% of the kids that go through the juvenile system can't read. They're illiterate. And a lot of that deals with self-esteem issues, and when you can't compete academically, a lot of them resort to physical activities to kind of demonstrate their ability to do
George,
things.
how do you get through school and get to be 14 or 15 and not be able to read?
That's a miracle I'm still trying to actually outline.
So that's a failure. I mean, in our education system, these kids are not identified as not being able to read, or they're just passed through and ignored?
Well, you know, it's not just the school's fault.
No.
It's you know, I work in the schools also, and I work with the young kids, but it's basically the family structure, the community structure, our institutions need to develop a philosophy of where they can be more flexible in working with these problems versus being entrenched in the same old mindset that if they do this a little harder, if they increase police vigilance here and there, that these things will go away. These things are not going to go away. They have to also understand that the kids we're dealing with are not literal. They're a visual generation. And so they take more information in via the computer, via TV, films, and so forth, whereas our generations, we taught, you know, we really appreciate
We read the
book.
newspaper. You can see them all
Yeah.
spread out here in front of my desk.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, probably you and I were the first television generation. We watched those little black and white pictures on TV, and that's probably part of my fascination with the whole TV situation. But when you say that they can't read, that's very troubling to me, because it means a general lack of education.
Well,
and how can you possibly go on and get any decent job in this country, any decent job at all? Even making change at a fast food store is impossible without reading.
You can't do anything without reading, and that's the problem. When these kids get before a judge in juvenile court, I would be surprised if a good third of them can actually spell their name and know where their address is, and they're 12 and 13-year-olds. I mean, I come across kids right now who are like 7 and 8, and they can't tell me where they live. You know,
They can't tell you the address.
Right, and I go to their homes and I tell their parents, I say, look, write the address down, the names of who's in this house, put it in the kid's pocket. So if anything ever happens, at least we know where this kid will go back to, because he doesn't know or she doesn't know where she lives.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's frightening.
All right, we'll come back with more from George Addison and your telephone calls, too, about what's causing the juvenile crime and what we can do about it. 571-JANE, 1-888-800-9283. Back in a moment. And we're back. We're talking with George Addison, youth advocate with Batiste.
Positive images that invoke self-esteem.
There you go, about youth violence and what we can do to stop it. And let's take some telephone calls if we can. Let's go to Steve. Hi, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's your comment today?
Hello?
Hi. Steve.
Hello?
Talk to us, Steve. Going once.
I'm here.
All right, I'm going to put you on hold. Tim is going to explain the rules to you one more time. Let's go to Jason in Charlestown. Hi, Jason.
Hello, Jen.
How you doing?
I just called to comment on Mr. Addison's comment earlier about the lack of education in the West End.
Pretty scary, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, it is. But on top of the lack of education, you have a surrounding drug crisis, which most of the violence is centered around the drugs or the gang colors or whatever you want to say, because if it's not happen to be tough and happen to go that certain distance with physical, aggression, happen to kill people over just what they say or over the drugs that you're dealing or whatever, and you're just trying to look like, you know, you're the man in the hood or whatever. Or,
How much of a drug problem is connected to our crime?
I'm not going to say that drugs, they don't impact the situation, but I think what impacts it even more is opportunity. Why are people doing drugs in the first place? It's because that's been demonstrated to them as a way to improve their lot. I mean, they see it as an opportunity, and even though they're going to wind up having a domino effect, a few at the top and the rest at the bottom not really getting anywhere,
right,
they still see that as a source of income
they
can get to and a way to get out of their situation.
They see the guys at the top, right, with the cool
the
car
Mercedes
and the cool jewelry.
Everything.
And, yeah, there you go.
Everything.
Yeah, well, actually, it's all like a chain reaction, in my opinion. I mean, it's like people, how he said that people need to educate their children, need to show them where they live, need to show them their phone number, whatever, if they have a phone, whatever. I feel that it goes from generation to generation because they're allowing that to stay in their everyday life.
And also, I think there would be a protective mechanism for the neighborhood with the drug dealers. I mean, if there is a lack of respect or knowledge of individuals from the police to the community, they're going to protect the people in the community first, aren't they? Whether or not they're doing drugs, or is that not true?
Well, let me give you an example. In Shepherd Square, they recently had an officer's car, catch fire in broad daylight.
Saw that.
And you have to ask yourself that, probably a law-abiding citizen called in, the incident. But, no one turned anybody in, really. And so what about the law-abiding people who saw the car burn, saw someone actually ignited and never turned in that individual? So, things are connected and they're not always, the way they appear on the surface. I agree with him about the drugs, but like I said, it's opportunity-based. I mean, if people actually felt they had an opportunity to get a decent education, go out here and get a decent job and be able to take care of themselves and improve their family, they would choose whatever that was. If they could get away with it. They felt they could get away with it.
Sure, if they were going to make money doing something legitimate, why do something illegal? Of course, some people do always go to the illegal. Steve,
right,
now, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Good for you. What's your comment today?
Well, I think it's time for this city and county to grow up. It's time for merger. And there's also another comment I'd like to make is adult education and create more opportunities for these young people. By city and county merging, that would create better jobs, a better outlook on life for these poor people.
Well, I don't know what merger is going to do to solve the problem. I mean, in what way? Louisville police are dealing with this primarily. It's not really a county problem. How's merger going to help?
How's merger going to help?
Yeah.
Well, for example, Argonne is left. What other corporations are going to leave? What other opportunities are
I see. Just keeping businesses here.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's create jobs. Let's help these poor children and create adult education. Some of these children's parents might not be able to read.
Well that's probably true.
A lot of them. And I understand what he's saying, and I appreciate the fact that he also sees a need to revalue human beings, whether it be the young people or the parents. A lot of the parents dropped the ball just under our generation.
Right.
And basically because a lot of us never passed any skills on to them to pass on to their children.
Well, if you have a mom or a dad who isn't capable of reading, doesn't understand certain words, has either dealt drugs or does currently do drugs, I think it's going to be a lot harder for you to see a path down that road than if you come from a good family background and where your parents are fighting you tooth and nail every time you walk out that door to be with your hoodlum friends.
Well,
pardon me for saying it that way, but that's what my parents would have said to me.
Well, actually, I deal in homes not only in the East End and Shepherd Square and in the West End, but also I have clients who are very wealthy, sitting right off the golf course, and their kids are experiencing the same dilemma that we're dealing with here in the inner city. And, it always comes down to the basics. Every good parent or every bad parent wants their kid to get a good education, wants them to better themselves and what opportunities they had, and also wants them to go on and become somebody and leave a legacy. That never changes. But when you come back to the communities and look where these kids have to spring from to get to that point, there's a lot of disparity.
There's a long distance between here and there. Randy in Louisville, what's your comment today?
Yeah, I believe it all stems from parenting. Whether it be a single-parent home, I'm from a single-parent home, the kids are not taught there's hope. Don't need that education. It ain't going to do you no good in today's time.
So whose job is it to instill hope where parents fall down? Who's there to fill, besides guys like George, who fills in that gap? Where is it going to come from?
It's got to come from the parent. It's got to come from the parents.
Well, suppose they're bankrupt.
Okay, I dealt with public housing. Every day, people on welfare, single parent, the house would be a mess. The apartment would be a mess. They'd be out having coffee.
Okay, so
they don't care.
All right, how do you make them care? If
Yeah.
you're saying it has to come from the parents, well, how do you do that?
Well, our philosophy is that, self-esteem begins at home, which is true. And when she says there is a lot of responsibility thrown around the parent, but I also stay in those housing projects a lot, and I go into those homes, and it's normally just shambles. It's going to take an outside agent like myself or someone that cares to go into these homes, first of all, and give these people a cause to find the hook that they've lost, because a lot of times their spirits have been broken. And whether it was through drugs or alcohol or just physical or mental abuse, you've got to find a hook where they want to reclaim that vision of hope that they once had as a kid.
They are motivated.
Right, you got to motivate them. And just throwing money at them and throwing opportunities at them is not going to be it.
Nope.
You've got to rekindle the spirit so that they can go ahead and get back out there. And
Well,
I've done that a lot, so I know it can be done.
Sounds like a church problem, too.
Well, in many ways, if the church would have been doing its job, and by that I mean going beyond its walls on a consistent basis, we wouldn't be in this dilemma. And not to pick any particular churches, but churches across the country are all facing the same dilemma right now. Attendance is probably around the low 30s for many churches across the nation.
Because the church is out there, outside of the walls. We'll be right back with more of your calls after this. About teen violence with George Addison, and there's a town hall meeting that we want to tell people about. Actually, I want to do it now because when we get close to the end of the show, I never have any time. I always run out of time. So here it is. This is information. Tell us about what's going to go on.
Well, this particular meeting here, I really didn't help organize it. But from what I understand, people are going to be getting together to try to come up with some solutions to our juvenile problems right now.
Okay, so if you want to participate, that's a good place to start. At the First Congressional Methodist Church, 3810 Garland Avenue. It's this Thursday at 7 o'clock. All right, we continue along with some of your telephone calls. Let's go to William, who's on the line. Hi, William. Welcome to the show. What's your comment today?
Yes, how you doing today?
Good, thank you.
My opinion is it starts in the home with the parents. And if the mother is illiterate, then the child going to be the same way. And when they do go to school, it's up to the teacher to see to that that they do know how to read. And but if they don't learn it in school, then it just have to be the teacher and the parents both.
Well, see, here's the thing. I think kids come to school these days. Not all kids. Some kids come to school unprepared to learn. Well, they are not coming in with either the social skills or the just the attitude, proper attitude or ability to learn very well.
Well, we have discovered, we've been working in schools now for nearly 5 years with our violence prevention and gang awareness program, and what we found is that by the time a kid gets in the 4th grade, at this basically now, they can't really read or articulate their point of view very well. So we've decided to dedicate our efforts to 5 to 7-year-olds just dealing with behavior and social interaction skills, so that primarily when they get to that 1st and 2nd grade, the teacher's not spending all day saying, Johnny, sit down, Johnny, stop doing this, Johnny throwing tantrums in the middle of the floor. I mean, there are a lot of things that, the schools can't deal with, and social services is not their area, and this is what they've gotten more into as a result of the need and demand and the breakdown of the family.
So how do you teach the rest of the classroom if Johnny's going nuts in the back of the classroom? You really can't. Bill and Shively, what's your comment today?
Yes, I've noticed lately that a lot of your big athletes and things, they want to, get these shoe contracts and things, and then you've got a $150 pair of shoes, $100 outfits or more, and people are wanting these so bad that, why can't some of these athletes and some of these big clothing companies, why can't they say, well, I'll take a contract, but give me a fourth of the money, so that more people can get these without this type of situation happening.
I don't know if it's their promotion of the product that's driving the cost of the product up. I think their promotion of the product, though, makes the desire for the child, all the stronger. I mean, the identification with Michael Jordan or the identification with Deion Sanders makes the desire for that product all the more enticing, doesn't it?
Right. It's the hook. And basically, you know, we all know in sales, whatever you're doing, you always try to find that hook that gets people's interest and get them going into their pockets.
Do they feel any conscience about this? I mean, do you ever talk to celebrities who are dealing with kid issues?
Well, we deal with actually quite a few rappers. We have a project we're working on in November called Get Me, Gang Eradication Through Music and Entertainment. And basically, what we want to do is give the artists and parents and kids an opportunity to get face-to-face and discuss the consequences of those type of videos and the lyrics and the songs and so forth, and let them see firsthand the impact on these kids' lives.
I like that. Ralph in Louisville, what's your comment? Ralph? Hello, Ralph.
Hello?
Yes, quickly.
All right. Yeah, I was wanting to say that a lot of times that the kids, they're focused on making money, and they see a lot of older people that, you know, they just like the fancy car, like y'all was saying, the fancy cars, the jewelry, and then it's like, it's just so much despair, and nobody's got anything positive to say to them. I'm not saying anything about your guest on the show. I'm just saying, you know, that a lot of times it does come out of the community and it's their surroundings and home. And
it'd be so hard, Ralph.
It's like you say.
It's so hard, Ralph, to tell a kid, look, you mean something despite the fact that you don't have Jordanaires. I mean, that's got to be a hard message for a kid to understand, and that's got to be something repeated over and over again. We need to take a break. We'll be right back. And those sneakers would be Air Jordans, not Jordanaires, which I think is a singing group. Thank you, George Addison. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for the opportunity to have me.
I hope you come back again to talk to us about this.
Anytime.
And best of luck with your ministry.
Thank you.
Okay. And you and I will be back here tomorrow on the show. Make sure you're tuned in, 12:30 here on Wave 3. And on the radio, you can tune me in weekday mornings at 9 on 84 WHAS. Have a great day.